You can't always.
This is the death
Remarkably empty.
Turn back towards God. Rise up.
Hi, my name is Nancy, and I've come here today to share a very personal story with you. It's a true story that happened to me, and it's about really how God just came into my life at a very, very difficult time, and He just showed me what a powerful God He is. He showed me how much He loves me and cares for me. Some years ago, my elderly father, was dying from a really aggressive form of lung cancer. And he was very, very sick. It was very sudden, and he got very sick very quickly. And because my family all lived out of state and I lived in town, the same town as him, I became his caretaker in the 4 short months in which this illness eventually took his life. So his dying wish, was to die in the house that he had lived for 50 years. This was my childhood home. He had raised his family there. And so he expressed this desire to be able to live the remainder of his life in this home. And I really wanted to make this happen for him. But I knew that as sick as he was, this was going to be an enormous task. And I had young children and I had other responsibilities in my life, but I really loved my father and wanted to make this happen for him. Now, as the disease progressed, and it became more difficult and he became more sick, there were often health crises that would happen. And it seemed like a lot of these health crises would happen at night. And they were scary. They were frightening. He had lung cancer. He was gasping for air. He couldn't breathe. So they were very frightening, not only to him, but to me also. And so because I was his primary caretaker, and we were not trying to cure this illness, we were just trying to keep him comfortable, it was me that would make that call to the doctor on call for the night. And that doctor would often write out or call in a prescription into the pharmacy. And I would make these late night trips to the pharmacy to pick up whatever prescription there was, to hopefully help get him more comfortably through the night. And, I felt this sense of urgency in getting to the pharmacy and back again. And I remember vividly that I would be driving along and it was like I could hear him gasping for air, even in the silence of my own car. So during one of these nights in which he was having a struggle, and I had called the pharmacy, and I was on my way to the pharmacy. This particular night, for no reason that I can remember, I just decided to take a different route. It was Christmas time. I think it was about 2 weeks before Christmas. And so because it was so late, most people had turned off their Christmas lights. So it was very dark. The night matched my mood. It was dark. It was very dreary. I remember it being kind of foggy. It just added to my sense of being afraid, of feeling very alone. And so it was just this overwhelming feeling of I can't really help my dad other than go to the pharmacy and get whatever prescription that the doctor has put there for me. But as I continued along this very unfamiliar road, it made a bend to the left. And I came around the corner of this bend in the road, and all of a sudden, there was this gigantic pine tree that was there. And at the top of the tree was this huge lit up Christmas star. And it really took me aback, partly because it was so dark out. And here was this beautiful, bright Christmas star. And it did appear to be homemade. It was very large. It appeared to be maybe 4 to 5 feet wide in diameter. There were lights fixed around the perimeter of it. And even though I had that sense of urgency in getting to that pharmacy and back home, I had a really difficult time taking my eyes off of this star. It was this lure, almost like back onto the road again. But it was in that moment that I became aware that despite everything that was going on and everything that I was going through, all of a sudden, mysteriously, I didn't feel alone anymore. And I felt this strange kind of peace come over me. So what happened over the course of my father's illness is that I would find myself often taking that particular route. And I noticed that whenever I would come around the bend, I'd be leaning over the steering wheel and my eyes would be upward, hoping to just get the first possible glance I could of my star, as I came to call it. It was just became this familiar beacon in the night. And like I said, I didn't think of God, but I didn't feel as alone anymore. Well, my father died that February, and I decided, it wasn't until late summer, but it was then that I decided that I would write a note to the unknown star people that lived at that house in the bend of the road. And I told them in my note what that star had meant to me at a very sad and trying time of my life, in the challenge of walking with my father this journey that eventually ended in his death. And I did explain to them that although I was not religious, that I just sensed God's presence when I looked at that star. So it was difficult to write it all because I really had no frame of reference. I had no religion, no real faith, no experience or personal experience or personal relationship whatsoever. But it was such a strong feeling that that is what I put in the note to these unknown people. And I sent it, and I received a letter back. I sat there and I opened this letter, and I was just stunned when I read what they had written to me. And this is what they wrote. They told me that when their son was not quite 10 years old, he had made this announcement that he was going to make a Jesus star. And he was going to cut it with his own hands. He was going to paint it. He was going to affix the lights, and he was going to climb to the top of that gigantic tree, and he was going to place his Jesus star at the top of that tree, high enough for the whole world to see and bright enough to light up the sky. Well, as some parents do, and as they did, they just kind of smiled and they patted him on the back, and they said, you know, that's a really nice idea. Maybe someday. But they really were concerned not only about the enormity of the task of making the star, but obviously that he was so insistent that he was going to climb this tree and place it there. When the boy was not quite 10, no star was placed at the top of the pine tree. So as the years went on, over the next 6 years exactly, this young boy turning into a young man never gave up on his insistence that he was going to make this star. And when he turned 16 and he could more effectively act on his own, sure enough, he made this star. He cut it. It was huge. It was about 5 feet in diameter. He painted it. He fixed the lights. And he strapped it to his back. And he climbed that tree. And he placed it in the tree, high enough for the whole world to see and bright enough to light up the sky. It's really important to this story, and that we take note that when he climbed that tree, that was a whole 30 years before I happened along. You know, a middle-aged woman with a dying father who was really rescued by this young boy's star on a cold, dark, dreary night as she drove to the pharmacy to rescue her father. I remember thinking as I read that, you know, some claim that miracles don't exist these days. And, you know, surely this miracle didn't provide any of the dramatics that any of us would read about in the Bible. You know, for an example, the miracle of turning the Nile into blood, the healing of the blind. There certainly were no huge dramatics. You could almost miss really what happened here. But nevertheless, right here was this amazing miracle, really. It was quiet. It seemed insignificant. But nevertheless, it was just as extraordinary. This miracle occurred. I mean, here existed this young boy with a desire so large, it really did seem very strange. But his total insistence of making it happen, and here was a woman, here was me, a whole 30 years later, just with this large task of her own, and really doomed to fail without the only one who could really help me, which was God. Doomed to fail, I mean, to be able to love my father in such a way as to really just pour myself out in service to him. So even though I was unaware of all of this at the time, in the beating heart of this young child, Jesus spoke, and the child listened. And this child's project would become a message. It would deliver a message to this woman, me, lost in the dark, you know, overwhelmed, unsure, alone, someone who didn't believe, was unsure of what she believed, if she believed at all. But what I saw, I think, when I looked at that boy's star was a snapshot of God's face, a picture. It was as if there was this photograph of his face, and it was the boy star who so perfectly represented the Christ child, our very own Lord and Savior, who comes to us when we're lost in the dark. There's no amount, as difficult as this was, there is no terror in illness, in death, as long as we have Jesus. There is nothing that can break our hearts as long as we have Jesus. I believe that God knew my future, and I believe that he knows all of our futures. And he was taking care of me even then, 30 years before I happened along. He was making preparations for me so that I would be okay and so that I could come to know him. And I think I truly believe in the deep part of my heart that he is taking care of all of us now and into the future. He knows our lives. He is all seeing, and he is not a God who is elusive and far away. He is a God who is with us. He has named us as his adopted sons and daughters, and he has shown us that he is a God of mercy and power to heal the deepest of sorrows, the deepest of wounds. And so during this really sad and trying time of my life, when I was so unsure, the glorious face of Jesus Christ was revealed to me in this Christmas star made by the hands of a very small child. So this difficult trial was an opportunity for God to demonstrate not only his love for me, but in me and through me as I just came to be with my Father in love. And I guess really, we come now to the miracle of all miracles, which is the miracle of our Lord's birth and his life, his death, his resurrection, a deep trust and faith that he lives, and the assurance that we can all find new life in him, and a life that will last into eternity.
Someone who's used media a lot in evangelization, so I believe in the importance of Catholic radio, Catholic TV, Catholics using the new media. Can I encourage everyone to watch Shalom TV? I think it's a great vehicle of evangelization. And God bless all of you.